Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Clubhouse event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And a special welcome to my co host, Shanaaz, who's going to be delivering the topic today. And I can't wait. Ready to receive all the pearls of wisdom, Shanaaz. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jacques. Again, the pressure is on. But so I was thinking about what caught my attention when you were speaking last week. You were talking about needing to sort of look beyond the bend. So not focusing when you were taking your bike, not focusing on like the bend, because that's probably where you're going to end up in, but looking what's past the bend. um so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about um the clients that come to see me, and even organizations that I've been involved in, but particularly clients that come and see me, or patients that see me. And even myself, when I think about how the challenge to form a new habit or change behavior, I was thinking that we often don't look ahead, or I don't look ahead. And when I think about some of my patients that I'm working with, and my experience with them, they don't look ahead. And when I'm saying look ahead, then I'm talking about, they're wanting to change, and they get really enthusiastic about the new change that they are wanting to do, a change in lifestyle, a new way of being, communicating better with their spouse. And so they'll be really into it, and it will go fine. Even when I'm working with some patients who, refer their children, and things will be going smoothly, and they're getting it. But what sometimes often patients and people forget about is what is lying ahead, and how can I maintain this behavior. Um, and um, or can I, if I've decided that I want to change, have I looked ahead to realize that there's going to come a time when I may slide back to previous behaviors, or I cannot maintain the change that I want to make in my life. And often I find that with behavior. And why I was thinking of, you were talking about the bend, that they don't look ahead, or even me, I don't look ahead. And one of the challenges, that if I refer to myself, that's always helpful with kind of trying to change to a better, a healthier lifestyle, is I get so enthusiastically involved in the change, and what I need to do, that I don't kind of think about the point where actually there's going to come a day when I'm not going to feel like doing this. Or there's going to come a day when I realize, oh my word, like I'm back at where I started. And so within social work, there's a very a sort of popular theory that we use, and so what we talk about in social work is the cycle of change, and it's by authors called Francesca and Clemente. And what the idea is that if I can identify, if I'm trying out a new habit or wanting to change my behavior, if I can identify at which stage of change within the cycle of change I'm in, then I can actually prevent myself from returning to my old habits. So, in other words, they believe that there's a cycle when we change, right? And there are six stages of this, making up this cycle of change. And so the first stage of this cycle is called pre-contemplation. And so at the pre-contemplation, you are what is actually happening is, you sort of thinking that, maybe you don't really, you wondering about should you change. You don't, maybe you're not aware that you should change. Sometimes you can call it, in denial. So maybe your health, for example, or some people came with issues around their relationship, and they come to me, and this person is the problem. So they don't kind of necessarily see that they need to change or that they have a problem. But maybe somebody has put pressure on them, like this spouse told them, I think you need to go and sort out yourself. Your past is playing a role here, etc. Or the doctor maybe said, your blood pressure is quite high. Or friends or family may have said you need to take care of yourself, you're not taking care of yourself. And that's sort of the pre-contemplation. They're hearing it, but they don't necessarily think they need to do anything about it, or they're aware of it but they don't do anything about it. So what the authors, De Clemente and Francesca, wanted a person to think about this as a cycle of change. What they actually say is um, that the cycle of change aims to describe how people of change with or without therapy. And what they want you to do is realize that you can take responsibility for your own change. And that they also say that people often go round the cycle more than once before making a final exit. And sometimes you've got to go around the cycle up to 7 or more times in order to kind of make that habit stick. And the idea is that when you're aware, as I said, of which part of the cycle of change you are in, you can actually go through the stages, or you can learn to prevent relapse, or you can learn to maintain that behavior. So I'm going to start then. I've spoken about, so the first, as I said, is pre-contemplation, when you're not really aware of that you need to change, or you don't think the problem is with you, or the doctors kind of told you your blood pressure is high and you kind of ignored it, but you have that information. So that's stage one. Then stage two is called contemplation. And then what actually then happens is that you think about that maybe you have a problem. Maybe you want to learn a new way of communicating with your family. Maybe it could be anything. It could be maybe you think, I need to get more, I need to change my lifestyle. I need to address my blood pressure. It could also be, I need to learn how to express myself better and express my needs better. So you're starting to become aware then of this kind of change that you need to make, or I need to lose some weight, for example. So you become aware and you kind of go out of that denial. So that's the second stage, which is then the contemplation. Literally, you're thinking about it. Then what you then have then is the preparation stage, and that's the third stage, and it's the decision making stage. So what they say is that in this stage you've decided that you need to change, but you're actually not sure how to go about it, right? You decided you need this new habit. You want to acquire a new habit. You want to spend more time with your family, for example, cut down on work and spend more time with your family. And they say that usually this phase can last for about, hopefully, you want to, not let it last too long. It's about 30 days before you, kind of a month before you come up with an idea or an action. So then the fourth stage is the action stage. And they say that in this stage, then, is when you've decided what new habits you are going to try out, or how you need to change, and you actually then start to actually change. So often what I find is like, and I'll give you an example. Someone came, and he needed to communicate better with his wife. He's had some issues in his past in terms of trust issues and expressing himself. And so he comes, and he comes to see me. and we decide, we start talking a bit about his past, etc. And he admits that he doesn't speak much. He finds it challenging to communicate his needs. And then so we start to kind of practice that. We come up with a plan as to what you can do, and then the patient goes and tries this out in his home, or it could be that you've decided to take on a personal trainer. And I think in Jacques, in your case, you decided, you are getting this bike. And now you're actually busy like learning how to get on the road with your bike. And so what they say is that the action phase should really ideally take about, it's the first 6 months, right? So it can take up to 6 months, so that in a sense it becomes a habit. So if you wanted to try becoming more healthy, adopting some exercise, take up a new hobby, then you need to stay in this. And there's various theories on how long it takes to make a habit stick. And sometimes what they suggest is like, up to 6 months. And then so that's the action stage, and then you have the fifth stage is called maintenance. And in this stage, what they say is that people have sustained their behavior and the change. So my patient, for example, him and his wife are getting really well. He's really learned to speak up when he needs to. And he's coming regularly to see me. Maybe some of the plan is that he journals, that he meets once a week with his wife. Him and his wife will have a conversation about where they are at once a week. And so this has kind of been happening. And so the important part of this maintenance stage, which a lot of people forget, and even when they are in an exercise program, when they are changing their behavior, when they are learning a new habit, is that they forget that about relapse, right? And so when I've worked with people who are sort of addicted to something, it can be anything, even just learning a new habit, for example, is that they forget that there is going to come a stage when they are tired of doing what they want to do. They may get bored, they may get frustrated. It may The expectations of what this change is all about is actually not working out for them, or they believe that it's not working out for them. And the important thing that about the cycle of change actually is that we always look ahead and know that relapse is part of the change, or a lapse is part of the change. So what will happen is that people will tell me, particularly those who, some of the patients that I've worked with, and they may have an addiction. No, I'm not gonna, they refuse to accept that there's a possibility, because, they've been 6 months strong. They've been going regularly to, say, the gym, or they're going regularly to, whichever meetings they go to. They're maintaining their support, etc. They've been exercising regularly, as I said. They've been eating correctly, or they've been having a really good relationship with their spouse. They're talking, or the child, for example, that has been referred to me is doing really well at school. But there will be an incident, and I think even for me, there are often times that when I'm trying to do something new, or I'm trying to bring about a change, I forget that I'm actually going to get that stage. I will be confronted with that. And so what they're saying is, what a lapse or a relapse is that it's a return to previous behavior despite the efforts of change. And they say that lapses can occur at any stage of the cycle. And it's like I said, it's a temporary return to either an addiction, or old ways of eating, or old ways of being. What happens, the patient then, after a while, he actually starts to become more silent, and he, just finds it really challenging again to kind of speak to his partner again, his spouse again. And then what they say relapse is then this full return to using the same behavior. And the idea is what I've really worked hard to help my patients understand and the clients that I see is that relapse or a lapse is a natural, typical part of change. That there will be times, and often we're so enthusiastic that we will not look ahead, and and we will be so at ease with where we are at, and so full of confidence and motivated that we forget that there's actually going to come a time when we are not going to feel like that, and that not feeling like that is actually a normal part of the change that we're trying to bring about, and that it's okay. And so, what I then find is that with the relapse, the whole idea is that because it's a cycle, the idea is that from relapse, you go back into contemplation again. So, you go back to stage one, which, you know what, I need to possibly change, I need to kind of do something. So, what I wanted to say was, so if you are at that part, that stage where you are in a relapse, often people don't recognize that they are in you're sort of returning to their old behavior. And what I find really valuable when I was looking at relapse, what they say is that relapse or this return to my previous behavior is not an event. It's not a one off, it's actually a process. And so they say that over time we may change how we work, how we do our things. But what starts to happen is that we eventually find ourselves in going back, returning to our old behavior. And what they say is that if I can just predict and develop an action plan for my relapse, if I can predict what are my warning signs for a relapse, then I will actually be able to prevent a relapse. And so, what we want to then do is we want to identify what are your personal relapse warning signs. Especially if you're currently in a situation. So, for example, um, if I think of myself trying to say change my eating, when I have a thing for chips, crisps, I think in the UK they call it, right? So your lays, etc. And I know that I know I joke with my family and I say, when you see me with a bag or munching at the table at some crisps or chips, then you know I've gone over to the dark side. So for me, that is a clear indicator that I have started to slowly kind of go emerge, kind of into this relapse and return to my old behavior. For this young man that came to see me, was newly married, etc. For him, it was that he was no longer meeting with his partner or with his wife once a week to kind of check in with each other. Where are we at? How are we doing? And so, for each one, what is a warning sign to you that you are returning to your old behavior? And for all of us, it will be different. For me, also with kind of getting physically active, it could be that I haven't used any of my gym equipment that I have available in a week. That to me is a clear sign. And so the idea is, once you have identified your personal warning signs, for whatever thing it is that you are returning to, that situation or that behavior, what you then want to do is do an action plan for each of the warning signs. So, for example, what you could easily do on some paper is have a table with 3 columns. And in the first column, you will write warning sign. So, for example, for me, I'd say have not touched gym equipment in a week. Then the second column would be an action that would help me. So how will I recommit to going back to, to becoming physically active? And I need to think about, okay, so one of the things that always gets me excited about, getting active again is music. So there's certain music that I enjoy that, and I'll put it on, and it will really make me want to exercise and jump up and down no matter what. Another action that usually helps me is when I go and look at my goals, or I look at my journal as to what I wanted to do. So re-looking, and I know that that's often what we need to do in part of coaching. We go back and we look. The third column is a really interesting column, which I think we don't often look at. What support do I need that would help me? And often, and I think that this, what I find when people come and see me and they're working on change, is that they don't think about the support that they need in order to get recommitted to their change. And often changing can be quite isolating. And when it's got to do with behavior, I find that people sometimes feel ashamed, or they feel that they need to be strong, and asking for help is a weakness. And so what I often have to do is help them understand that actually change, that getting support and change is actually, it's part of that. Support actually is part of the change process, that often, most times, we cannot do it alone. And I think you've spoken so many times about getting to know our tribe, and who is our tribe, and who are the people that come alongside us. So what you can then do is break up all your warning signs, because often when I have people coming back to me after 6 months, what there is a pattern, and the pattern is that they've slowly, perhaps, for example, not been using their journal, or the plan that we had set up to help them, the action plan that we created to help them maintain this behavior. Slowly, they've been doing less of things, taking less care of themselves, not spending more time at work instead of spending time with the family. And then we start to identify that maybe a warning sign, for example, could be stress, right? So when I'm stressed, and then I go off into, I become agitated, and I isolate myself, and I don't speak to my partner. So what could happen then for that person or young man that came to see me? For him, he would be, work stress is a trigger for him to not speak to his partner. So what would he need to do? So the action that would help him. And when I think about it, what he actually found helpful then, in a sense, that he would speak to me about it, and then, because he found that, sometimes he gets into an argument, and so then the support that would help him. And so for him, what we discovered with this young man is that since he's been married, he hasn't been spending much time with his own friends, and that's where the support comes in, that he does actually also have to spend time with friends. For people who are trying a new lifestyle in terms of healthy eating and habits, what we have found and what I've seen when they've come to see me, or where they've come because of a particular self-destructive behavior, that support has been vital, and that I have had to link them up with other groups of people, or even their own family, because often when we are trying to change or do something new, it can be quite isolating. And so, what I would kind of encourage as I finish, what I would encourage people, that as you think of the different stages of change, always remember that there is a relapse stage, and that you do, and that relapsing and returning to your old behavior is not a one off event. It probably started 3 months ago, where you started not doing certain things that you needed to do. And that you always, then, when you're thinking of changing or doing a new habit, you always put an action plan where you look at what are my warning signs for relapse. What is the action that I'm going to do that would help me in when I am in relapse? And what is the support that I need to get out of the relapse and then continue with the cycle again? So that's it for me for this evening. And Jacques, if you have any questions or comments, yeah, please feel free.
It really dovetails with all our topics if you think about it. And maybe just one or two comments is the comfort of knowing that it's part of the cycle of change. Having a relapse or lapse is not failure, and it's really part of, and what you said, it's not an event which might indicate that, all right, this was not worth it, the effort was not worth it, why even try and go into that victim mode, but rather realize that all it takes is maybe a stronger sense of self-awareness so that you can actually notice the warning signs. And as you also say, part of the comfort is that it's not one day you wake up and suddenly you regress. No, you've been regressing over a while. So just notice that so you can arrest the trend, be able to predict it, and like anything else, take action and be willing to take action. And as you were saying, is when we are driven by enthusiasm, when new things that we're implementing are just working so wonderfully, understand there's this relapse stage that's going to happen. So you got to think beyond that and anticipate, because you anticipate it. You don't get fixated on the relapse, because that's the bend in the road. You look beyond it. You know it's going to come. So what are you going to do to prepare for it? So no, love it. Thank you very much, Shanaaz.
It's a pleasure, Jacques. Thank you for, as I said, you keep your stories of your bike. It really does make me think. So it helps.
No, I love the backup, the scientific backup. The literature. There's science to all of this, not just gut talking. And this once again is rich. And for the listeners, listen, taking action and not wallowing in self pity is the key. So therefore, little by little, these steps bring you into that place where you can live a fully engaged life and truly say, I enjoy my life. And yeah, thank you, Shanaaz. And I look forward to continuing next week. Have a fantastic week and be safe, whatever you do.
Thank you
Keep
so much.
warm
Thank you,
and be as
Jacques. Thank
dry as
you.
possible.
Definitely. Thank you. Bye.
All
Bye.
right, bye.